They say home is where the heart is. But what happens when your family turns that home into a monument to everything you'll never be good enough to achieve? I learned the answer on my graduation day, standing alone in a sea of celebrating families, holding a diploma nobody cared about. The auditorium of Northwestern University was packed with proud parents, excited siblings, and cameras flashing everywhere. I had just walked across that stage and received my degree with honors, summa cum laude in finance, after 4 years of relentless work. My hands trembled slightly as I held the leather-bound diploma, searching the family section for the 2 seats I had reserved months ago. Empty, both of them. Cold and vacant like they had never been meant for anyone at all. I told myself they were just running late. Traffic from our hometown of Lake Forest to Evanston could be unpredictable. But then my phone buzzed with a notification that made my stomach drop. It was from my mother's Instagram account. The photo showed my younger brother Brendan in a sleek penthouse in Las Vegas, champagne bottles scattered across a marble counter, gold confetti frozen midair in the camera flash. My parents stood on either side of him, their faces glowing with pride I had never seen directed at me. The caption read, "So proud of our golden boy. This is what real success looks like. VP at 26. The Carter family legacy continues." I stood there in my graduation gown, diploma in hand, staring at that post while families hugged and cried happy tears all around me. The timestamp showed it had been posted 20 minutes ago, right when I was walking across the stage. They weren't late. They had never planned to come. They had chosen Brendan's promotion party over my graduation, and they wanted to make sure I knew it. My phone rang. For one desperate second, I thought it might be them calling to explain, to apologize. Instead, it was my mother Eleanor, and her voice was clipped with annoyance. "Evelyn, I hope you understand why we couldn't make it. Brendan's promotion to vice president is a once-in-a-lifetime achievement. This is actual success, not just some piece of paper. You'll get over it." I opened my mouth to respond, but she had already hung up. Just like that. 4 years of sacrificing sleep, working 3 part-time jobs to minimize my loans, maintaining a perfect GPA, and all she had to offer was a dismissal that my accomplishments were just some piece of paper. Something crystallized in that moment. Not sadness, not even anger yet. Just a cold, clear understanding that I would never matter to them. Not the way Brendan did. Not in any way that counted. I walked back to my small apartment in Rogers Park alone that evening, still wearing my graduation gown because I had nobody to take photos with, nobody to celebrate with. The neighborhood was vibrant and diverse, full of life, but I felt completely hollow. My roommate Maya had already moved out for a job in Boston, and the empty apartment echoed with my footsteps. I sat on the floor of my bare living room, diploma in my lap, and scrolled through my phone. More posts from my family flooded my feed. My father Richard raising a toast to the son who made us proud. Eleanor showing off Brendan's corner office view. Even distant relatives commenting with praise for Brendan's achievement while my graduation went completely unmentioned. I had spent my entire life competing for their attention, their approval, their love. I had excelled in every way I knew how. I had tried to be perfect, and it had never been enough because I had committed the unforgivable sin of being born second and female. That night, I made myself a promise. I would succeed in a way they couldn't ignore. I would build something so undeniable that they would have to see me. And if they still refused, I would make sure they felt the weight of their dismissal in a way they could never forget. 6 months later, I was working at a prestigious investment firm in downtown Chicago, living in a modest studio in Ukrainian Village, and saving every penny I could. My salary was good, my performance reviews were excellent, but I was driven by something deeper than career advancement. I was building a war chest. I had started dating Daniel during my last semester at Northwestern. He was a real estate attorney, brilliant and kind, with a quiet intensity that matched my own. When I told him about my family, about the graduation they had missed, and the years of being compared unfavorably to Brendan, his jaw had tightened with anger on my behalf. "They don't deserve you," he had said simply, "but maybe we can make them see what they lost." Daniel had grown up in a working-class family in Pilsen, the son of Polish immigrants who had celebrated every one of his achievements like it was a miracle. He couldn't comprehend parents who would treat their child the way mine treated me, but he understood revenge, and he understood real estate. It was Daniel who first mentioned the Carter house. We were having dinner at a small Thai restaurant in our neighborhood when he brought it up casually. "Your family home in Lake Forest?" he said, setting down his chopsticks. "The one your parents always talk about being in the family for generations. Do you know if they own it outright?" I had laughed bitterly. "Are you kidding? That house is their pride and joy. It's been in the Carter family since my great-grandfather built it in the 1920 seconds. My mother would rather die than lose that house." Daniel had smiled, and there was something calculating in his expression. "What if I told you they took out a substantial home equity loan 3 years ago? And what if I told you they've been struggling with the payments?" I had stared at him. "How do you know that?" "Public records," he said. I was curious, so I looked. The loan was for $500,000. They've missed 2 payments in the last 6 months. If they miss one more, the bank can start foreclosure proceedings. The idea had planted itself in my mind that night and grown roots. The Carter house, the symbol of our family legacy, the place where I had spent my childhood feeling like a ghost in my own home. What if I could own it? What if I could hold the deed to the one thing my parents valued more than anything except Brendan? Over the next few months, Daniel and I worked together to make it happen. He had connections in the real estate and banking world, and I had money I had been saving religiously. We learned that the bank was indeed preparing to move toward foreclosure. My parents were drowning in debt they had taken on to maintain their lavish lifestyle and fund Brendan's various business ventures, most of which had failed spectacularly despite their constant praise of his genius. The opportunity came faster than I expected. The bank wanted to offload the loan, and Daniel helped me structure a deal. It wasn't cheap. It took nearly everything I had saved plus a loan of my own, but on a cold Tuesday in March, I signed the papers that made me the legal owner of the Carter family home. My name, Evelyn Marie Carter, appeared on the deed. The house that had been in my family for generations now belonged to the daughter they had dismissed as insignificant. I held that deed in my hands and felt something close to euphoria. Daniel squeezed my shoulder. Now comes the interesting part. When are you going to tell them? I'm not, I said, smiling. I'm going to let them figure it out. 2 weeks later, my father called. It was the first time I had heard from either parent in months. His voice was strained, trying to maintain authority but failing. Evelyn, we need to talk. It's about the house. What about it? I kept my voice neutral. The bank is being completely unreasonable about the mortgage situation. We need some temporary financial assistance to get current on the payments. I know we've had our differences, but family is family. We need you to help us. I almost laughed. Family is family. The same family that had skipped my graduation. The same family that forgot my birthday last year. The same family that referred to me as their mistake when they thought I couldn't hear. How much do you need? I asked. $50,000 to get current, and give us some breathing room. He said it like it was nothing, like I should just hand over that kind of money without question. That's a lot of money, Dad. Evelyn, this is the Carter house. It's been in our family for generations. It's your legacy too. Surely you can understand the importance of preserving it. My legacy. How generous of him to suddenly include me in the family narrative when he needed something. Let me think about it, I said. I'll call you back. I didn't call back. Instead, I waited. 3 more days passed before my mother called, her voice shrill with panic. Evelyn Marie Carter, your father told me he asked you for help and you said you'd think about it. What is there to think about? This is your family home. If we lose it, that's on you. Mom, I'm not really sure how it's my responsibility to pay for a house I don't live in. Don't you dare get smart with me. You've always been selfish, always thinking about yourself. Your brother would never hesitate to help family. There it was, the comparison to Brendan. It never took long. Really? Where is Brendan then? Why isn't he helping? There was a long pause. His money is tied up in investments right now. It's complicated. Of course it was. Brendan's money was always tied up or working for him or in some other state that made it unavailable. The truth was that Brendan was terrible with money and constantly needed my parents to bail him out, which was why they were in this situation in the first place. Well, my money is tied up too, I said calmly. In a house, actually, in Lake Forest. Another pause, longer this time. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the Carter house, Mom. The one you're worried about losing. You can't lose it because it's not yours anymore. It's mine. I heard her gasp. That's impossible. You're lying. Check the deed, Mom. My name is on it. I bought the loan from the bank 6 weeks ago. The house belongs to me now. The sound she made was somewhere between a scream and a sob. I heard my father's voice in the background demanding to know what was wrong. Then he grabbed the phone. What the hell are you talking about? His voice was thunder, the same tone he had used when I was a child and had disappointed him, which was often. I'm talking about the fact that I'm the legal owner of the Carter house, Dad. You're currently living in my property. You vindictive little bitch, you can't do this. That house is ours. Actually, it's not. It's mine. I have the deed to prove it. I own it free and clear. Daniel had taken the phone gently from my hand. His voice was calm and professional. Mr. Carter, this is Daniel Morrison. I'm Evelyn's attorney. What she's telling you is completely accurate and legal. The bank sold the loan, she purchased it, and when you defaulted, the property transferred to her ownership. Everything was done by the book. We'll sue. We'll fight this. That house has been in my family for generations. You're welcome to consult with your own attorney, but I assure you this will hold up in court. The question now is what arrangement Evelyn wants to make with you going forward. Daniel handed the phone back to me. I could hear my father's heavy breathing on the other end, my mother crying in the background. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice steady. You can continue living in the house, but you'll pay me rent, fair market value, and you'll sign a lease that I draw up. If you don't like those terms, I can have you evicted within 30 days. Evelyn, please. My mother had grabbed the phone, her voice cracking. Please don't do this. We're your parents. We made mistakes, but we love you. Do you? Because it's funny, you've had my whole life to show me that love, and the only time I've heard from you in the past year is when you needed money. That doesn't feel like love, Mom. That feels like convenience. We'll pay whatever rent you want. Just please don't take the house. I'm not taking anything, Mom. I already own it. The question is whether you can stay. We ended the call with them agreeing to discuss the lease terms. I felt Daniel's arms wrap around me from behind. How do you feel? He asked. Powerful, I said, and I meant it. For the first time in my life, I held the power in my relationship with my family. They couldn't dismiss me, couldn't ignore me, couldn't treat me as less than. I owned the thing they valued most. The next morning, they showed up at my apartment unannounced. I heard the pounding on my door and knew immediately who it was. When I opened it, all three of them stood there. My parents looked haggard, older than I remembered. Brendan stood slightly behind them, his usual arrogance dimmed but not entirely gone. They pushed their way inside without invitation. My studio apartment was tiny, furnished with second-hand pieces and IKEA basics. The contrast with their usual surroundings couldn't have been more stark. Eleanor looked around with barely concealed disdain. This is where you live? Evelyn, this is depressing. It's what I can afford after buying your house out from under you, I replied sweetly. Richard stepped forward, trying to loom over me the way he had when I was young, but I didn't flinch. Daniel moved to stand beside me, and my father's eyes flicked to him with uncertainty. We're here to talk sense into you, Richard said. This is family business. It doesn't involve your boyfriend. Actually, I'm her attorney in this matter, Daniel said, and unless you want to conduct this discussion through lawyers, I suggest you show some respect. Brendan spoke for the first time, and there was something in his voice I had never heard before. Uncertainty. Maybe even fear. Evelyn, come on. This is crazy. We're family. You can't seriously kick Mom and Dad out of their home. I turned to him, and all the years of comparison, all the times I had been told I wasn't as smart, wasn't as successful, wasn't as valuable as him, came flooding back. It's not their home, Brendan. It's mine. And where was this family loyalty when I graduated? Where was it on my birthday last year? Where has it been my entire life while you got everything and I got nothing? That's not fair, Eleanor protested. We've supported you. We paid for your education. You paid the portion my scholarships didn't cover, and you reminded me of that fact every chance you got. Meanwhile, you bought Brendan a car for his 16th birthday, paid for his apartment in college, and gave him seed money for 3 failed businesses. Don't talk to me about support. Richard's face was turning red. You've always been jealous of your brother, always bitter that he's more successful. Successful? I laughed, and it was sharp enough to cut. He's been fired from 2 jobs, his businesses all tanked, and he's currently living off your money. I have a career, Dad. I own property. I did it all myself. But you've never seen it because you decided when I was born that only Brendan mattered. That's not true, Eleanor said, but her voice was weak. It is true. You missed my graduation to celebrate his promotion. A promotion that, by the way, he lost 6 months later for incompetence. Did you know that? He got fired. But I'm sure you found a way to blame everyone but him. Brendan's face had gone pale. How did you know about that? Because unlike you, I actually have connections in the business world. People talk, Brendan. Everyone knows you're a screw-up writing on Daddy's name. Evelyn, Eleanor gasped. That's cruel. Is it? Is it crueler than telling me my graduation was just a piece of paper? Crueler than posting pictures of his party during my ceremony? Crueler than ignoring my existence unless you need something? The room fell silent. Daniel's hand found mine and squeezed. I had never said these things out loud to them before. I had swallowed my hurt, tried to earn their love, convinced myself that if I just worked harder, achieved more, they would finally see me. If you want to stay in that house, I continued, my voice deadly calm, here's what's going to happen. You'll pay me $3,000 a month in rent. You'll sign a year-long lease with an option for me to terminate with 60 days' notice. And most importantly, you'll treat me with respect. No more comparisons to Brendan. No more dismissing my accomplishments. No more calling only when you need something. $3,000 a month? Richard sputtered. That's highway robbery. That house is worth more than that in rent. Actually, fair market rent for a house that size in Lake Forest is closer to $5,000, Daniel interjected. Evelyn is being generous. And if we refuse? Richard demanded. I smiled, and I knew it didn't reach my eyes. Then I evict you and rent it to someone else. Or better yet, I sell it. I've already had 2 real estate agents reach out about the property. The land alone is worth over $1 million. I'm sure a developer would love to tear down that old house and build something new. Eleanor made a sound like a wounded animal. You wouldn't. That house is a historical landmark. It's been in this family for generations. Then I suggest you sign the lease, Mom. They signed it 3 days later. Daniel had drawn up an ironclad contract that laid out every term clearly. They would pay rent on the first of each month. They would maintain the property. They would give me 72 hours notice before making any significant changes. And there was a clause that allowed me to terminate the lease if they violated any terms, including my requirement for respectful treatment. I had them sign it at a coffee shop in downtown Lake Forest, neutral territory. Eleanor cried through the whole process. Richard's hand shook as he signed. Brendan refused to make eye contact with me. When it was done, I took my copy of the lease and stood up to leave. My father grabbed my wrist. "I hope you're happy," he said bitterly. "You've destroyed this family." I looked down at his hand on my wrist, then met his eyes. "I didn't destroy anything, Dad. I just stopped pretending that we were something we never were." I pulled my hand free and walked away. Daniel followed, and we didn't look back. Over the following months, my life changed in ways I hadn't anticipated. Owning the house gave me a sense of power, yes, but more than that, it gave me closure. I wasn't chasing their approval anymore. I wasn't trying to prove my worth to people who had already decided I had none. My parents paid the rent on time, though it clearly pained them. I would get terse emails on the first of each month confirming the payment had been transferred. No other communication. Fine by me. But then things started to shift. My mother called one evening, her voice tentative in a way I had never heard. "Evelyn, the water heater is making a strange noise. I know according to the lease we're supposed to handle minor repairs, but this might be something major. Would you be able to send someone to look at it?" It was such a small thing, but it represented something larger. She was asking for my help, acknowledging my ownership, my control. I called a plumber I knew and arranged for him to go out the next day. "Thank you," she said quietly before hanging up. "Thank you." 2 words I couldn't remember her ever saying to me before. Similar calls came over the next few weeks. A leak in the roof, a problem with the furnace, questions about whether they could repaint one of the bedrooms. Each time, they had to ask my permission. Each time, they had to acknowledge that I held the power. 6 months into the lease, my father called with a request that surprised me. "Evelyn, I need to ask you something, and I understand if you say no." His voice lacked its usual bombast. "I'm trying to secure investment for a new business venture. One of the potential investors wants to meet at the house, see the family legacy, that sort of thing. Would you be willing to attend the dinner? As the owner." I almost said no on principle, but something in his voice gave me pause. "Why would you want me there if I'm just going to embarrass you?" "You wouldn't embarrass me," he said it quietly. "I've been thinking a lot these past months. About what you said. About how we treated you. You were right, Evelyn. About all of it." It wasn't a full apology. My father wasn't capable of that, but it was acknowledgement, and that was more than I had ever gotten from him before. "I'll think about it," I said. I discussed it with Daniel that night over dinner at our favorite Vietnamese restaurant in Uptown. We had moved in together a month earlier, and my life felt more stable and happier than it ever had. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I think I want to go," I said slowly. "Not because I forgive them, but because I want them to see me as I am now. Successful, confident, in control." "Then we'll both go," Daniel said, "together." The dinner was held on a Saturday evening in late October. The Carter house looked beautiful in the autumn twilight, the old oak trees surrounding it ablaze with red and gold. I had dressed carefully in a tailored navy suit, my hair styled professionally, wearing the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was worth. Daniel and I arrived in his car, and my parents met us at the door. My mother looked nervous, my father uncomfortable. Brendan was there too, in the background as always, but subdued. "Thank you for coming," Eleanor said, and she actually sounded like she meant it. The investor was a distinguished man in his 60s named Robert Harrison, there with his wife Catherine. They were old money, the kind of people my parents had always aspired to impress. Over dinner, my father introduced me not as his daughter, but as the owner of the property. Robert's eyebrows rose with interest. "Is that so? Richard, I was under the impression this house had been in your family for generations." "It has been," I said smoothly, "and now it's in my name. I'm the current Carter generation, carrying on the legacy." I saw my father wince slightly, but he didn't contradict me. Instead, he did something I never expected. He began to talk about my accomplishments, my degree from Northwestern, my position at the investment firm, my success in building my own wealth at such a young age. It wasn't effusive, it wasn't even particularly warm, but it was real. He was acknowledging me, in front of people whose opinion mattered to him, as someone of value. Robert turned to me with genuine interest. "You know, Evelyn, I'm always looking for sharp financial minds for my investment board. Would you be interested in discussing an opportunity?" I met my father's eyes across the table. He looked old in that moment, diminished, and I realized something. I didn't need to punish him anymore. I had already won. I'd be very interested, I told Robert. The evening ended with me exchanging business cards with Robert, plans made for lunch the following week. As Daniel and I prepared to leave, my mother walked me to the door. Evelyn, she said softly, her hand on my arm. I know I don't have the right to ask this, but are we going to be okay? You and I? I looked at her, really looked at her. She was still elegant, still put together, but there was a fragility I had never noticed before, or maybe it had always been there and I had been too hurt to see it. I don't know, Mom, I said honestly. I'm not sure I can forget everything. But maybe, if things keep going like they have been, we can build something new. Something better. Her eyes filled with tears. I would like that. A year later, I was sitting in the living room of the Carter house, but it felt different now. I came to visit occasionally, by choice rather than obligation. The house was still technically mine, but the relationship had evolved beyond landlord and tenant. My parents had just attended my promotion celebration at the firm. They had brought flowers and a card that said they were proud of me. Small gestures, but they mattered. Brendan had moved to Seattle for a fresh start, and surprisingly, we had started talking occasionally. He had apologized in his own way, acknowledging that he had been complicit in how they treated me by allowing himself to be positioned as the golden child. I never asked for that. He had told me during one late-night phone call. I just took it because it was easier than questioning it. I'm sorry, Evie, you deserved better. The nickname, one he hadn't used since we were children, had made me cry. Now, sitting in the house that had once represented everything I couldn't have, everything I wasn't good enough for, I felt something unexpected. Peace. Daniel came to sit beside me, handing me a glass of wine. Through the window, I could see my parents in the garden, my father showing my mother something in the rose bushes he was tending. They looked smaller somehow, more human, less like the towering figures of judgment from my childhood, and more like flawed people trying to do better. Having regrets? Daniel asked gently. I thought about the question. Did I regret buying the house, forcing the confrontation, upending the family dynamics? Did I regret the year of coldness and hurt feelings? No, I said finally. They needed to see me, really see me, and they never would have if I hadn't made them. You could sell it back to them now, he pointed out, if you wanted. Things are different now. I considered it. The house was worth substantially more than I had paid for it. I could make a profit and be done with it. But something held me back. Not yet, I said. Maybe someday. But for now, I think I'll keep it. It's a good reminder. Of what? That I'm not the forgotten daughter anymore. That I built my own success. That I forced them to see me not through manipulation or pleading, but through action and power. I took a sip of wine. They used to define success as money and status in Brendan, but I redefined it. And now they're living in my definition of success, literally. Daniel laughed and pulled me closer. You're terrifying sometimes. You know that? Good, I said, smiling. I'd rather be terrifying than invisible. That evening, before we left, my father pulled me aside. We stood in the study, surrounded by generations of Carter family photos. My graduation photo had been added recently, I noticed. Right next to Brendan's. Evelyn, he said, his voice gruff. I need to say something, and I'm not good at this, so bear with me. I waited. I was wrong. About you. About what mattered. About everything. He cleared his throat. I spent your whole life pushing you aside because I thought Brendan was what success looked like, but you're the one who succeeded. You're the one who built something real. And I'm sorry it took losing everything for me to see that. It wasn't enough to erase 28 years of hurt. It might never be enough, but it was a start. Thank you for saying that, I said quietly. He nodded, looked like he might say more, then simply pulled me into an awkward hug. It was stiff and uncomfortable and lasted only a few seconds, but it was also the first time I could remember my father hugging me. As Daniel and I drove back to our apartment in the city that night, I thought about everything that had happened. The girl who had stood alone in her graduation gown, holding a diploma nobody cared about, felt like someone from another lifetime. That girl had been desperate for approval, would have done anything to be seen by her family. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I had taken that hurt and that dismissal and I had forged it into power. I had reclaimed the narrative of my life. I had made them understand that success wasn't what they thought it was, that value wasn't measured by favoritism and blind praise. I had bought their house, yes. I had forced them into a position where they had to recognize my worth. But more than that, I had bought my own freedom. Freedom from needing their approval. Freedom from chasing validation that was never freely given. Freedom to define my own worth. The house would always be a symbol. Not just of the Carter family legacy, but of the day I decided I mattered more than their opinion of me. The day I chose power over acceptance. The day I stopped being the forgotten daughter and became the woman who owned her own story. And that, I thought as Daniel reached over to take my hand, that was the truest form of success there was. Not money, not status, not even revenge. But the absolute certainty that I was enough, exactly as I was, regardless of whether anyone else ever saw it. They had tried to define me as less than. I had redefined everything instead. And in the end, They were the ones living in my world, by my rules, under my roof. That house, the one they had treasured as their legacy, had become the monument to mine. I had taken everything they thought made them superior, and I had proven it meant nothing without the one thing they had never given me: respect. Now they gave it, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. And honestly, that felt better than any unconditional love ever could have. Because I had earned it. I had demanded it. I had refused to accept anything less. The forgotten daughter had become impossible to ignore. And the house that was supposed to represent everything I could never achieve now bore my name on the deed. That was justice. That was victory. That was mine.